Chapter 1, The Station at Void Edge. The cruiser's forward batteries lit the void with a lattice of plasma fire, each bolt carving through the black like a surgeon's scalpel. Mara's voice cut through the command deck, sharp and unyielding. Targeting solutions locked, heavy yield strike now. The ASF's launch tubes spat their payload in disciplined sequence. Warheads streaked across the battlespace, their contrails vanishing into the abyss before detonating against the cruiser's shields. The alien vessel shuddered, its hull plates rippling under the impact. Shields collapsing, Vasquez reported, his tone steady, almost clinical. Secondary reactor spike detected. They're trying to overcharge, Mara's jaw tightened. They won't get the chance, fire again. The second volley struck true. The cruiser's forward section erupted, a blossom of molten alloy expanding outward. Fragments spun into the void, glowing like embers. The alien ship's spine cracked and its weapons went silent. Cruiser neutralized, Vasquez confirmed. The deck fell into a brief silence, broken only by the hum of the ASF systems. Mara exhaled, but her eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. The battle was not over, it had merely shifted. Prepare for FTL jump, she ordered. We're not staying in this sector. The crew moved with precision, hands gliding over consoles, voices clipped and efficient. Yet beneath the calm, tension coiled. They all knew what lay ahead, Void Edge. The colossal alien station had hung at the edge of mapped space for centuries, abandoned yet intact. Every empire had claimed it, none had held it. Its architecture defied human engineering, vast corridors that stretched for kilometers, chambers large enough to house fleets, and a core that pulsed faintly with unknown energy. Scavenger crews whispered of treasures inside, weapons beyond comprehension, alloys that bent physics, archives of extinct civilizations. But they also whispered of ships that entered and never returned. Mara had no patience for whispers. She had orders. The ASF was to breach the station, secure its core, and deny it to the alien empires clawing at humanity's borders. Jump coordinates locked, navigation confirmed. Execute, space folded. The stars smeared into ribbons, then snapped back. The ASF emerged in the shadow of Void Edge. The station dwarfed them. Its hull stretched across the void like a continent torn free from a planet, jagged towers rising from its surface, each bristling with dormant machinery. The structure's sheer scale pressed against the crew's senses, a silent weight that made the void feel smaller. Radiation levels stable, Vasquez said. No active defenses detected. Scanners are blind past the outer shell, another officer added. The interior is unreadable. Mara studied the display. The station's silhouette filled the screen, its geometry alien yet deliberate. It was not a ruin, it was waiting. Launch the boarding teams, she ordered. Dropships detached from the ASF, their thrusters flaring as they descended toward the station's surface. The crews inside were veterans, scavengers turned soldiers, men and women who had learned to strip alien wrecks under fire. Their voices over comms were calm, clipped, devoid of bravado. Touchdown confirmed, came the report. Outer hull breach commencing. Explosive charges bit into the station's plating. The metal resisted, thicker than any human alloy, but it yielded. A circular section fell inward, revealing a corridor vast enough to swallow a destroyer. Entry achieved, moving in. The boarding teams advanced, weapons raised, lights cutting through the dark. The corridor walls shimmered faintly, etched with patterns that shifted when viewed from different angles. The air, or what passed for it, was heavy, charged with static. Readings are unstable, Vasquez muttered from the ASF. Energy signatures fluctuating across the spectrum. It's not dead in there. Mara's gaze hardened. Keep them moving. We need the core. Inside the station, the scavengers pressed forward. Their boots echoed against the alien floor, each step swallowed by the vastness. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crackle of comms. Then the first anomaly appeared. A chamber opened before them, circular, its walls lined with structures resembling sarcophagi. Each was sealed, smooth, and pulsing faintly with inner light. Command, we've got containers, the team leader reported. His voice was steady, but the pause betrayed unease. They're not mechanical, organic signatures detected. Mara's reply was immediate. Do not engage, mark the location and proceed. But the scavengers lingered. One reached out, gloved hand brushing against the surface of a sarcophagus. The light within flared. Contact, the chamber trembled. The sarcophagi split open, releasing a hiss of vapor. Shapes stirred inside, elongated skeletal forms wrapped in strands of alien tissue. Their eyes ignited with cold luminescence. The team's weapons snapped up. Hostiles, gunfire erupted, sharp bursts echoing through the chamber. The alien forms moved with unnatural speed, their limbs bending at impossible angles. One scavenger was seized, armor pierced by talons that sliced through alloy like paper. His scream cut off as he was dragged into the dark. On the ASF, alarms blared. Vasquez's voice was tight. We've got movement across the station. Energy spikes everywhere. They're waking up. Mara's hand clenched into a fist. The whispers had been true. Void Edge was not abandoned. It was a tomb, and they had broken the seal. Pull the teams back, she ordered, her voice iron. Now. but even as the command echoed, the station itself began to stir. Towers lit with alien fire, corridors resonated with a low hum, and the core's pulse grew stronger. The horror was awake, and it was vast. Mara's eyes locked on the tactical display, watching as the station systems came alive. She spoke with the calm of a soldier who understood the scale of the war they had just unleashed. Prepare for full engagement. Humanity has trespassed, and Void Edge will not forgive. The ASF Relentless shuddered as a shockwave rippled through its hull, the bridge's emergency lights flickering to a bloody red. Lieutenant Commander Mara Chen gripped the edge of the tactical console, her knuckles white. The station's activation wasn't gradual, it was a detonation of energy, a pulse that sent every sensor on the ship into overload. "Report," she said, her voice flat, cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Vasquez, hunched over the comms station, shook his head. Team 2 is gone, no signal, no life signs. Team 1 is pinned in Sector Gamma. They're reporting things. Not just the ones from the sarcophagi, bigger. The main screen flickered, feeding a grainy feed from a Scavenger's helmet cam. Mara watched as a corridor twisted, its walls undulating like muscle. The Scavenger stumbled, and the camera caught a glimpse of a shape towering insectoid, its carapace gleaming with wet organic light. It moved without sound, without warning, and the feed cut to static. Mara didn't flinch. She'd seen worse in the Jovian Wars, but this wasn't a human enemy. This was a system designed to kill, and they'd triggered it. "Full engagement protocols," she ordered, turning to the weapons officer. "Charge the spinal railgun. Target the station's core." "Ma'am, that could collapse the entire structure. We've still got people aboard." "They're already dead," Mara said, the words cold and precise. "We're not, do it." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but the tension was a living thing, coiling in the air. On the tactical display, Void Edge's energy signature spiked again, and a new wave of contacts appeared, dozens then hundreds, spilling from the station's lower levels. "They're launching something," Vasquez said, his voice cracking. "Small craft, no, not craft, they're organic, they're swimming through vacuum." Mara's eyes narrowed. The station was a hive, and they'd kicked it. "Point defense active, prepare for boarding action. I want every Marine at the airlocks. No one gets on this ship." The Relentless hummed as its systems powered up, railguns charging, missiles sliding into launch tubes, but the station was faster. A beam of violet light lanced from its core, striking the ship's forward shields. The bridge lurched, and Mara was thrown against her chair. "Shields at 60%, the engineer called out. "They're targeting our power grid." Mara's mind raced. The station wasn't just defending itself, it was hunting. It had assessed their threat level and responded with lethal precision. The whispers from the artifacts hadn't been warnings. They'd been instructions. "Vasquez, patch me through to Team 1. Now." The comm crackled, and a voice, harsh, breathless, cut through. "Command, this is Sergeant Outr. We're in the core chamber. There's a central unit, a brain. It's controlling everything. Can you destroy it?" A pause, the sound of gunfire, then Outr's voice again, strained. "Negative, it's shielded, but we've got a thermal charge. We can breach the hull, vent the atmosphere, starve it." Mara considered the option. It would kill the team, but it might buy the Relentless time to escape. She didn't hesitate. "Do it, Sergeant. We'll cover your retreat as long as we can." Another pause, then a grim laugh. "There's no retreat, Commander. We'll see this through." Outrr out. The comm went silent. Mara stared at the tactical display, watching as the station's energy output continued to climb. The horror they'd awakened was vast, ancient, and patient, but humans had a different kind of patience, the kind born of desperation. "Helm, prepare to execute a slingshot maneuver around the station. We're not running, we're repositioning." The helmsman looked back, confused. "Ma'am, that puts us directly in their firing line." Mara's smile was thin, devoid of warmth. "Exactly. They expect us to flee. We don't." "We go through." The Relentless surged forward, engines screaming as it angled toward Void Edge's burning core. The station's weapons tracked them, beams of violet light slicing through the black, but Mara held course, her eyes fixed on the target. The horror was awake, but humanity had learned in the cold void between stars that some nightmares could be outrun, and some could be destroyed. We need to write Chapter 3 of 12 for Episode 9. The story context given ends with Commander Mara on the Relentless, O'Caffer's team on the station, and Mara deciding to SL shot around the station. Chapter 3 should continue from there. Must be 801,000 words, military sci-fi, high tension, no CLKs, crisp dialogue, macro to micro scale, output only story text. The Relentless curved hard, its hull groaning under stress as it swept around Void Edge's equator. Mara gripped the command rail, watching the station's surface blur past, a scarred landscape of fused alloy and crystalline growths pulsing with sickly light. "Helm, maintain angle. We need to skim the outer ring." "Aye, ma'am." "But the gravitational wake from the core is pulling us off axis. We'll lose stability in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Mara keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, brace for emergency burn." "Engineering, I need everything you've got on the port thrusters. No reserves, no safeties." A gruff voice answered. "Chief says we'll tear the nacelles off." Then we'll do it without nacelles. Execute. The deck tilted. Red warnings flooded the display. The station's weapons had stopped tracking. They were too close, too fast for the automated systems to recalibrate. But the horror inside didn't need turrets. The station itself began to flex. Mara saw it, the outer ring segments contracting, squeezing inward like a closing fist. The void between the struts shimmered, and a wave of energy rippled outward, not directed but expanding. A pulse. It hit the relentless amidships. The lights died. Emergency fluorescence flickered on as the ship tumbled. Mara's harness caught her. Alarms shrieked. Report. Shields collapsed. Hull integrity at 68%. We've lost lateral control. The helmsman fought the stick. Ma'am, we're going to hit the ring. No, we're not. Mara toggled to engineering. Chief, I need a full burn on all aft thrusters. Now, we'll cook the reactor. Then cook it. A 2-second delay. Then the deck hammered upward. Mara felt her teeth clench as acceleration pressed her into the seat. The relentless straightened, skipping off the station's surface, a grinding screech of metal on alien stone, and shot clear. On the tactical display, the station's energy signature had spiked again. Outr's team was still inside. Commander, we've got a message from the station. Sergeant Outre, text only, he says. Charge placed, detonating in 30 seconds. We're not coming out. Mara closed her eyes for half a second, then she opened them. Helm, put us on a reciprocal course. We'll pick up any escape pods. Ma'am, there won't be any. I know, do it anyway. The Relentless swung around, bow pointed back at Void Edge. The station's central tower was now a blinding white column of energy, rising like a pillar of judgment. Mara counted. 20 seconds, 15, 10. The explosion was silent in vacuum. A section of the outer ring, the one Outr's team had been on, blew outward in a cloud of debris and venting atmosphere. The station's energy column flickered, dimmed, then stabilized. The horror was still alive, but it had been hurt. We've got a signal. Weak. Life pod, Sector 7. Bring us alongside. Weapons free. If anything comes near that pod, you burn it. The pod tumbled out of the debris cloud, scorched and crumpled. Grapplers snagged it, and the Relentless pulled away, engines straining. Mara opened a channel to the pod. Outre, anyone, static, then a voice, hoarse and broken. Commander, we're still here, 3 of us. The charge worked. Mostly, the brain's damaged, but it's regenerating. You've got maybe 6 hours before it's fully operational again, and it's angry. Mara looked at the station, still pulsing, still alive. The horror they'd woken wouldn't forget. It would hunt them now. Get the survivors to medbay. Helm, set course for the nearest jump point. We're leaving the system. And the station, Mara's smile was cold, will come back with bigger guns. Chapter 4, the 6-hour window. The Relentless's hull vibrated under the strain of acceleration, its engines burning hard toward the jump point. Inside, the crew moved with the precision of soldiers who knew hesitation meant death. Commander Mara stood at the tactical display, eyes locked on the pulsing icon that marked Void Edge Station. The alien construct still glowed, its wounded core knitting itself back together like flesh closing over a wound. 6 hours, that was all the time they had before the horror inside became whole again. Status on the survivors, Mara asked, voice clipped. Lieutenant Hale's reply came fast. Outre stabilized, 2 others critical but breathing. Medbay's doing everything they can. Good. Keep them alive, we'll need their intel. The bridge was silent except for the hum of systems. Every officer knew what Mara was thinking. The station wasn't just a threat, it was bait. The alien empires had abandoned it for a reason, and now humanity had stumbled into their trap. If the Relentless fled without striking back, the horror would awaken fully, and the galaxy would belong to it. Commander, said Tactical Officer Rios, long-range scans show movement, multiple contacts vectoring in from the edge of the system, not human signatures. Fast, Mara's jaw tightened. Which empire? Rios adjusted the filters. Looks like Kharan Dominion cruisers, 6 of them. Heavy tonnage, the Kharan Dominion, arrogant, brutal, convinced their fleets were untouchable. Mara had fought them before. They underestimated humans every time, and every time they bled for it. But 6 cruisers against 1 destroyer was suicide. Helm, alter course, keep us angled toward the jump point but prepare evasive maneuvers. Weapons, load full spread. If they want to fight, they'll get one. The crew obeyed without question. Calm, efficient, lethal. Humanity's strength wasn't in numbers or technology, it was in the refusal to panic. The Kharan would expect desperation. They would find something colder. The Dominion cruisers appeared on the main screen, sleek black hulls bristling with weapons. Their formation was textbook arrogance, tight wedge, shields overlapping, daring the Relentless to challenge them. A transmission cut through the void, harsh and guttural. This system is claimed by the Dominion. Human vessel, power down and surrender. Your trespass ends here. Mara leaned forward, her smile thin. Open channel, the comm officer nodded. Channel open. This is Commander Mara of the Relentless. Your claim is irrelevant. That station is waking, and if you don't want it tearing your empire apart, you'll stand aside. The alien voice hissed back. Human lies. The station is ours. Its power will serve the Dominion. You will be erased. Mara cut the channel. Weapons target their lead ship, fire when ready. The Relentless's rail batteries thundered, slamming tungsten slugs across the void. The lead cruiser's shields flared, cracked, then collapsed under the precision barrage. A second volley tore through its hull, venting fire and bodies into space. The Dominion formation faltered, arrogance bleeding into shock. Direct hit, Rios reported. One cruiser down. Good, now they know we're not prey. The remaining cruisers scattered, adjusting formation. Plasma lances streaked toward the Relentless, forcing Helm to roll the destroyer hard. Shields flared, but the crew stayed calm. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. Keep firing, don't waste shots, make them blade. Minutes stretched into brutal exchanges. The Relentless darted between plasma storms, rail batteries hammering precise strikes. Another cruiser broke apart, its engines detonating in a silent bloom, but the Dominion pressed harder, their numbers grinding against human resolve. Commander, Hale called out, we can't hold this pace, shields at 40%, hull integrity dropping. Mara's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The station's energy column pulsed brighter, its regeneration accelerating. 6 hours was shrinking fast. If they stayed locked with the Dominion, they'd never escape before the horror awoke. Helm, vector us toward the station, Mara ordered. The crew froze for a heartbeat. Toward the station meant toward the horror, but Mara's tone left no room for doubt. We're not running. If the Dominion wants the station, let them have it, up close. The Relentless swung, engines roaring, cutting straight toward Void Edge. The Dominion cruisers followed, eager to corner their prey. Mara watched the display, calculating. The station's defenses were stirring, automated turrets flickering to life. The Dominion didn't see it yet. They were too focused on her ship. Rios, Mara said, feed targeting data to the station's defenses. Trick its systems into seeing Dominion signatures as hostile. Rios's fingers flew across the console. Done. Uploading now, the station's turrets ignited, spewing beams of energy into the void. Dominion cruisers reeled as their shields buckled under the unexpected assault. Mara's plan was brutal, let the horror defend itself and let the Dominion be the sacrifice. Commander, Hale said quietly, you're turning the station against them. Mara's smile was cold. Exactly, let the arrogant bleed first. The battle shifted instantly. Dominion cruisers scrambled, firing wildly at both the Relentless and the station. But the station's weapons were relentless, tearing into their hulls with alien precision. One cruiser disintegrated under the barrage, another spun out of control, engines failing. The Dominion fleet was collapsing. 3 cruisers left, Rios reported. They're breaking formation. Good, keep pressure on them, don't let them regroup. The Relentless surged forward, rail batteries hammering another cruiser until it split apart. The last 2 tried to retreat, engines flaring. Mara gave the order without hesitation. Finish them. The destroyer's guns roared and the final Dominion ships were reduced to wreckage. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the hum of systems. The Relentless floated near the wounded station, its crew exhausted but alive. Status, Mara asked. Dominion fleet destroyed, Rios said, but the station, its accelerating regeneration. 4 hours, maybe less. Mara stared at the pulsing core. The horror was feeding on the battle, growing stronger with every death. Humanity had bought time, but not enough. The next move would decide everything. Helm, Mara said, voice steady, set course for the jump point, maximum burn, we regroup, we rearm, and when we come back, we end this. The Relentless turned, engines blazing, leaving the station behind. But Mara knew the truth. The horror was awake now, and it would remember the humans who dared wound it. The jump transit hum vibrated through the deck plates under Mara's boots, rattling the half-empty coffee mug clamped to Rios's tack console. His fingers flew across the board, soft chimes of system checks cutting through the low thrum of the FTL drive. Jump stable, 2 minutes to drop, he said, not looking up. Damping fields holding at 98%, no sign we picked up a tail. Mara nodded, eyes fixed on the main screen's blur of streaking star trails. The 4 hours they'd bought felt like a lead weight in her gut. The station's regeneration rate had ticked up on the sensors before they jumped. 3 hours, 2 hours. Now Rios's final estimate was 90 minutes until it was fully operational, and whatever was inside would be loose in the sector. The jump bubble collapsed with a jolt that threw half the bridge crew forward, straps biting into their shoulders. Star trails vanished, replaced by the cold glint of regroup point Alpha, a hollowed-out iron asteroid, sensor buoys spaced tight around its perimeter, the faint flash of welding arcs visible on the outer hull where engineering teams shored up destroyer dry docks. Then the tack board lit up red. Multiple contacts, bearing 210, 300, 410. Rios barked, fingers flying to fire control. Dominion, 3 heavy cruisers, 2 frigates, they're locking weapons. Mara's jaw tightened. The distress signal from the Vanguard they'd destroyed must have pinged out before the final cruisers blew. The Dominion main fleet was supposed to be 12 hours out from the Void Edge system. These had to be a scouting element that broke off early. Sound general quarters, she ordered, voice flat. Helm, bring us around to put the asteroid between us and their firing arcs. Target their frigate engines first. We don't need them closing to boarding range. The Relentless rolled hard, deck tilting 15 degrees as the pilot fought the controls. Rail fire lanced out from the Dominion ships, slamming into the asteroid's outer sensor buoys, sending up plumes of icy rock vapor. Their comms are glitching hard, Jax called from engineering, voice crackling over the comms. Picking up Dominion frequency chatter, they say their FTL nav is messed up. They think the asteroid is a Dominion supply cache. They have no clue we're here. Mara's lips twitched. The station's horror energy was already bleeding out, scrambling Dominion systems before the thing was even fully awake. That was the edge they needed. Rios, jam their targeting arrays, she said. Jax, vent a canister of leftover Dominion sensor decoys from the munitions bay. Make them think there's a second enemy fleet hiding behind the asteroid. The decoys flared bright on the Dominion sensors, pinging back as 5 heavy cruiser signatures. The Dominion ships faltered, their rail fire dropping off as they reoriented to face the fake threat. They're breaking formation, Rios reported, a grin tugging at his mouth. 2 cruisers are peeling off to engage the decoys. 1 frigate is hanging back, still pinging the asteroid. Target the frigate, Mara ordered. Take out its sensors first, then its engines. We don't want it getting a signal off to the rest of the Dominion fleet. The Relentless's rail batteries hammered the frigate, its sensor dish blowing apart in a shower of sparks, engines sputtering before it went dark, drifting toward the asteroid's gravity well. The 2 cruisers are turning back, Rio said, but they're confused. Half their crew is reporting ghost contacts on internal sensors. Perfect. The horror's influence was already seeping out, even 10 light-years from the station. It was preying on their fear before it even had a physical form. Jax, get a damage report on the dry docks, Mara said, turning to the tactical screen. How long until we can rearm? 2 hours if we pull repair crews off non-essential projects, Jax replied. We've got enough rail ammo for 3 full broadsides and the prototype void charge is charged. Mara stared at the pulsing red dot marking the Dominion main fleet's position, still 10 hours out from the station, now scattered by the horror's interference. The scouting element was neutralized, no distress signal got out. They had 2 hours to rearm, then 10 hours to get back to the station before the Dominion arrived, and before the horror was fully operational. Make it happen, she said, leaning back in her command chair. And broadcast a sector-wide alert to all scavenger crews. Any ships carrying alien salvage from Void Edge, turn it over to ASF immediately, no exceptions. If they refuse, we'll seize it by force. Rios glanced over, raising an eyebrow. You think there are scavengers dumb enough to ignore the warning? Mara's gaze dropped to the tactical screen, where a faint, almost invisible blip of a civilian salvage tug drifted just outside the asteroid's sensor range, its hold stacked with the same iridescent alien alloy that made up the Void Edge station's hull. I know there are, she said, cold as the void outside. And they'll be the first ones the horror hunts down if we don't get that salvage before it wakes up. We need to write Chapter 6 of 12 for Episode 9. The context, Mara's ship has just destroyed a Dominion SC outing element. They have 2 hours to rearm, then 10 hours to get back to the station before Dominion arrives and before the horror fully wakes. Mara spots a civilian salvage tug with alien alloy. Chapter 6 should continue from that moment. Focus on macro to micro, human versus alien horror, no CL ICE acutes, high stakes, 800-100 0 words, output only story text, helm, intercept course. Bring us alongside that tug before it burns for the belt. Mara's voice cut through the bridge hum like a blade. The Rust Bucket, a rearmed ASF corvette with more patch jobs than original plating, angled her thrusters and slid out of the asteroid's shadow. The salvage tug was a fat, slow bucket of bolts, her nameplate reading glimmer and faded stencil. Her pilot clearly thought drifting on the fringe meant safety. Wrong. Open a channel. Fleet frequency, not civilian. Jax nodded. Channel open. Unidentified salvage vessel glimmer. This is ASF command vessel Voidwalker. Cut your drive and prepare for boarding. You are carrying contraband material under Emergency Directive 9. Noncompliance will be met with lethal force. A pause, then static crackled and a woman's voice sharp with panic. Voidwalker, we're just hauling scrap, no weapons, we're leaving the sector, let us pass. Your hold is stacked with Void Edge alloy, that scrap is a beacon. You bring it anywhere near a populated station, you kill everyone inside, heave to or I punch a hole in your reactor. Rios muttered under his breath, she's got a family, probably trying to cash out before the Dominion lockdown. She's going to die either way, Mara replied, eyes fixed on the sensor feed. I'm giving her a chance to die slow instead of fast. The glimmer's drive flickered, then cut. The tug went dark, coasting on momentum. Boarding party, Rios, you're with me. Jax, you have the bridge. If the horror shows any sign of movement, you jump. Don't wait for me. Copy that, Captain. Mara grabbed a mag-booted rifle and a portable scanner. The airlock cycled and she stepped into the void, tethered to Rios. They crossed the gap in 2 long bounds, magnetic soles clanging against the Glimmer's hull. The outer hatch was manual. She cranked it open, dropped into the cramped airlock, and hit the cycle. Inside, the tug smelled of recycled air, stale coffee, and fear. A woman in a grease-stained flight suit stood in the central corridor, hands raised. Behind her, a young boy, maybe 10, clung to a support strut, eyes wide. "I said no weapons," the woman repeated. Mara lowered her rifle but didn't holster it. "You have 2 choices. We offload that alloy into space, or we scuttle your ship with you on it. The thing that built that station is waking up. It's already killed a Dominion scout squadron. It will find you by the resonance of that metal, and it will tear you apart molecule by molecule." The woman's face went pale. She looked at the boy. "I didn't know. Nobody knows. That's the problem. How much do you have?" 12 tons, stripped from a collapsed hab ring. "I thought it was just high-grade structural." "It's not. It's a homing signal. We'll take it. You and your son get a safe corridor out of the sector. ASF will compensate you after we survive the next 20 hours. The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. Cargo bay is aft. I'll help you load." "No, you stay here, Rios. Secure the alloy in our external clamp. Jetson anything we can't carry into the nearest star. I want no trace." Rios moved past her, hauling the first crate. Mara stayed, watching the woman and the boy. The boy whispered something to his mother. She shook her head. "What's your name?" Mara asked. Lena Cortez. He's Sam." "Lena, you just saved your lives, but I need more. Did you see anything else on that station?" "Any organic residue, any power signatures?" Lena's eyes darted. "There was a core chamber, sealed. We couldn't get in, but the walls, they hummed like a heartbeat. We got out fast." Mara's jaw tightened. "How long ago?" 3 days. We've been running ever since." "You felt it, the vibration?" Lena nodded slowly. "It was wrong, like it was listening." Mara turned to the open airlock. "Rios, finish up. We're done here." She looked back at Lena. "Follow our beacon to the ASF rally point. Tell them Mara sent you. They'll get you to a safe zone." "Thank you," Lena said, voice cracking. "Don't thank me yet." The horror doesn't care about gratitude. Mara stepped back into the void, the Glimmer shrinking behind her as she crossed to the Void Walker. The alloy crates were already clamped to the external hull, ready for jettison. She cycled through the airlock, pulled off her helmet, and walked to the bridge. "Status," Jax pointed at the tactical display. "The horror's energy signature just spiked. It's not dormant anymore, it's moving." Mara's blood went cold, heading straight for the Dominion fleet's debris field. "It's feeding." She dropped into her chair. "Then we just lost our decoy. Helm, get us back to the station. Maximum burn." We arm on the move. The Voidwalker's engines flared and the asteroid belt blurred past. 2 hours of rearm, 10 hours of transit, and a horror that was no longer sleeping. And somewhere out there, 12 tons of alloy drifted toward a star, trailing a resonance that the horror had already tasted. Chapter 7, Episode 9. Scavengers who looted Void Edge's Colossal abandoned alien station woke a horror no human could outrun. ASF, the Voidwalker's hull trembled under the strain of its engines, the ship clawing through the asteroid belt like a predator refusing to slow. Mara sat rigid in her chair, eyes locked on the tactical display. The horror's energy signature pulsed across the grid, expanding, consuming, adapting. It wasn't just feeding, it was learning. "ETA to station?" she asked, voice clipped. 8 hours if we hold this burn," Helm replied, sweat beading on his temple. "But the reactor's running hot. We'll need to vent plasma in 3. "Do it. I don't care if we light up every Dominion sensor in the sector. The horror's already awake. Stealth is irrelevant." Jax leaned forward, tapping the console. Dominion remnants are scattered across the debris field. Their cruisers were gutted, but their sensor buoys are still active. If the horror feeds on those, it'll have a map of the sector. Mara's jaw tightened. "We cut the map out of its hands, prep the strike drones. I want every buoy slagged before it can touch them." Rio's voice crackled over comms from the drone bay. "We're arming on the move, Captain. Payloads are live. Give me coordinates." "Sending now," Jax said, fingers flying. Target grid locked. The bridge fell silent for a moment, the hum of the engines filling the void. Mara's thoughts raced. The Dominion had mocked humanity for decades, calling them scavengers, parasites, opportunists. Yet here they were, humans, calm under pressure, weaponizing scraps and improvisation against horrors no empire had ever faced. The arrogance of the Dominion had birthed this nightmare, and now it was humanity's burden to cage it. "Captain," Helm said suddenly, voice sharp, "we've got movement, not the horror, something else. Multiple contacts vectoring in from the far side of the belt." Jax's eyes narrowed. Dominion survivors, the tactical display bloomed with red markers. Sleek, angular ships, scarred but functional. Dominion war frigates, limping yet armed. Their formation was ragged, but their intent was clear. "They're converging on the station," Jax muttered. "They know, they're trying to reclaim it." Mara stood, her voice cutting through the tension. "Open channel." "I want their commander," Static hissed, then a voice cold, imperious, dripping with disdain. "Human vessel, you trespass on Dominion salvage, withdraw immediately or be annihilated." Mara's lips curled into a thin smile. Dominion salvage, that station birthed the horror that gutted your fleet. You want it back, fine, but you won't survive it. A pause, then laughter, brittle and cruel. You presume to lecture the Dominion, you are scavengers, nothing more. We will harness this entity. Bend it to our will, Jax muttered under his breath, arrogant fools. Mara's tone hardened. Then you'll die screaming, cut channel. The Dominion frigates accelerated, weapons charging. Mara dropped back into her chair. Helm, adjust course, we intercept. Jax, coordinate drone strike. Rios, prep boarding teams. If they want the station, they'll have to crawl over our corpses. The Voidwalker surged forward, drones streaking into the black. Explosions flared across the debris field as sensor buoys were obliterated, fragments scattering like sparks. The Dominion frigates opened fire, beams slicing through the void. The Voidwalker rolled hard, shields flaring under impact. Return fire, Mara barked. Target their engines, cripple them. The ship's railguns thundered, slugs tearing into Dominion hulls. One frigate spun out of formation, venting atmosphere. Another limped, its drive sputtering, but the Dominion pressed on, relentless, arrogant. Then the tactical grid shifted. The horror signature spiked again, massive, hungry, accelerating. It was moving toward the clash, drawn by the violence, the energy, the resonance of destruction. Jax's voice was grim. It's coming straight for us. Mara's eyes locked on the display. The horror's energy field dwarfed everything, a storm swallowing stars. Then we used the Dominion as bait. Helm, break formation. Keep us mobile, let them take the brunt. The Dominion commander's voice cut through comms again, panicked now. Human vessel, what is this? What have you unleashed? Mara's reply was ice. Your arrogance, your empire's corpse, and now it's hungry. The horror descended, a wave of energy rippling across the void. Dominion frigates fired wildly, beams vanishing into the storm. One ship was caught, its hull collapsing inward as if crushed by invisible jaws. Another erupted, fragments consumed by the pulsing field. On the bridge, silence reigned. The crew watched as the Dominion fleet was torn apart, shredded like paper before a hurricane. Mara's voice broke the stillness. This is what happens when empires play gods, and this is why humanity survives. We don't pretend to control the void, we endure it. Jax turned, eyes hard. Captain, if it finishes with them, we're next. Mara nodded. Then we don't wait. Helm, full burn to the station. Rios, prep the core charges. If we can't cage it, we bury it. The Voidwalker roared forward, engines blazing. Behind them, the Dominion fleet died screaming, arrogance devoured by the horror they thought they could master. Ahead, the colossal alien station loomed, its sealed core chamber waiting, humming like a heartbeat. Humanity's gamble was about to begin. And Mara knew this wasn't survival anymore. This was war. We need to write Chapter 8 of 12 for Episode 9. The provided context ends with Mara's decision to head to the station and set core charges. Chapter 8 should continue from there. The story is about Scavengers eluding an alien station and waking a horror. The previous chapter ended with the human ship Voidwalker heading to the station while the Dominion fleet is being destroyed. Chapter 8 should depict their approach to the station, possibly encountering the Horus influence and the crew's efforts to plant charges. Must be 800-100 words, macro to micro scale, no CLAKs, crisp dialogue, high stakes, output only story text. The Voidwalker shuddered as it punched through the debris field. What remained of the Dominion fleet was now a graveyard of twisted metal and silent reactors, their screams still echoing on the comms loop. Mara killed the channel with a tap. Status, she said, not looking up from the tactical display. Core breach in 3 of their capital ships, Rios reported from engineering. The energy field is expanding, it's feeding. Jax leaned over his console. The station's gravity well is pulling us in. We're on intercept course with the docking ring, but the horror is between us and the hull. It's not just energy, it's got mass. I'm reading density fluctuations. Like it's breathing, Chen whispered. Mara's jaw tightened. It's learning. It watched the Dominion die, now it wants to see how we react. Helm, don't slow down. Rios, I need those core charges primed and ready the second we breach the station's atmospheric shield. Captain, the shield is down, Jax said. It was down before we arrived. The horror must have collapsed it. Or the station dropped it intentionally, Mara replied, to let us in. The bridge fell silent. The alien station grew in the viewport, its black surface scarred with ancient impact craters and sealed hangar bays. One bay was open, a maw the size of a city block, dark and waiting. That's our entry, Mara said. Jax, full burn. Don't give it time to think. The Voidwalker lurched forward, engines screaming at redline. The horror's energy field rippled around them, tendrils of light brushing the hull. Alarms blared, temperature spikes, radiation leaks. It's trying to find a way in, Chen said, hands flying over the environmental controls. I'm cycling the outer hull with liquid nitrogen. That's slowing the thermal transfer. It won't hold forever, Jax said. It doesn't have to, Mara said. We just need to reach the core chamber. Rios, how far from the docking bay to the core? Station schematics are incomplete, but best guess, 300 meters of corridor, then a vertical shaft. Maybe 4 minutes on foot. Too long, Jack said. We'll be sitting targets. Then we make it shorter. Mara turned to the helm. Take us into the bay. Hard landing. We'll use the ship's hull as a shield while we move. The bay swallowed them. Lights flickered, ancient aliens still powered after millennia. The Voidwalker slammed down, landing struts groaning against the deck. Atmosphere hissed. Gravity shifted, pulling them toward the station's own field. Go, Mara ordered. Rios, Chen with me. Jax, you stay on the ship. Keep the engines hot. If we don't come back in 10 minutes, you burn atmosphere and don't look back. Captain, that's an order. They moved. The corridor was wide, built for beings larger than humans. Walls pulsed with faint bioluminescence, veins of light that seemed to respond to their presence. The horror's energy field was weaker here, diffused by the station's own shielding, but it was still there, a pressure at the edge of consciousness. Rios carried the charges, 3 cylindrical devices, each capable of a directed antimatter burst. Chen had a scanner mapping the path ahead. Mara led, rifle up, eyes scanning. Movement, Chen whispered. Thermal signatures, small, fast. Scavengers, Rios asked. No, something else. Chen pointed. Behind the bulkhead, the wall split. A creature emerged. No, not a creature. A fragment. A piece of the horror that had taken physical form. It was all angles and shifting light, a geometric nightmare that crawled along the ceiling. Its eyes, if they were eyes, locked onto them. Mara fired. The rounds passed through it, vaporizing on contact. The fragment screamed, a sound that wasn't sound, and dissolved. Their echoes, Mara said, leftover consciousness. The horror is projecting itself into the station. Then the core chamber might be the source, Rios said, or the anchor. They ran. The corridor opened into a vast atrium, a cathedral of alien engineering. At the center, a shaft descended into darkness. The core chamber was below, but the horror was waiting. A mass of energy coalesced in the shaft, a whirlpool of light and shadow. It spoke not in words, but in images, empires crumbling, stars dying, a billion voices silenced. Mara didn't flinch. Rios, plant the charges here on the rim of the shaft. The yield might not be enough from this distance. It will be if we detonate the station's own power source. The core is a reactor. We crack it, the whole station goes. Chen's scanner beeped. Captain, I'm reading a massive energy buildup below. The horror is channeling power from the core. If we detonate now, we might trigger a cascade that consumes the system. Then we do it now. Mara grabbed a charge, armed it, and tossed it into the shaft. Rios, Chen, same, on my mark. The horror surged upward. Tendrils of energy lashed out, wrapping around Chen's ankle. She cried out, dragged toward the edge. Mara grabbed her arm, rifle braced against the deck. Rios, the detonator. Rios slammed the trigger. The charges blinked red. 5 seconds. The horror tightened its grip. Chen's eyes met Mara's. Let me go. No. 4. Mara fired into the shaft, the rounds detonating against the energy mass. It recoiled. Chen pulled free. 3. They ran. The station groaned. The horror screamed. 2. Mara dove through the airlock. Rios slammed the hatch. 1. The universe went white. The white flash bleached the inside of the airlock before the roar hit, a physical force that vibrated the fillings in Mara's molars and slammed her back against the hatch. The deck tilted 15 degrees under her boots, alarms screaming so loud they drowned out the ringing in her ears. She pressed her forearm to the viewport, squinting through the afterimage seared into her retinas. The shaft wasn't blocked, it was a chimney. Incandescent blue-white plasma licked up the sides of the engineering deck, melting the alien alloy bulkheads like wax. The charges had cracked the core, all right, just not the way they'd planned. The reactor wasn't just blowing, it was venting, pouring raw energy up into the station's upper decks in a torrent that would eat through the hull in under 10 minutes. Chen, Mara didn't turn, just kept her eyes on the shaft. Status, ankles fucked, not broken. Chen's voice was tight, no self-pity. She depropped herself against the bulkhead, stripping the magazine off her rifle to check ammo count, a purple bruise already spiderwebbing up her calf from the energy tendril's grip. Rounds are good, fléchettes are down to half a mag. Rios was at the airlock control panel, slamming the inner seal override until the status light blinked green. Inner hatch is locked. External hull breach on deck 12, secondary on deck 9, cascading failure across all forward sections. That thing's not dead. He was right. The plasma in the shaft was cohering, pulling into a spindly, multi-limbed shape far taller than the engineering deck's ceiling. It surged upward, bursting through the deck plates above them, tendrils of superheated shadow lashing out. One caught Rios' sleeve, setting the synthetic fabric on fire before he dove out of the way, slapping the flame out against the deck. Kinetic only, Chen yelled, popping up and firing a fléchette round at the entity's central dark core. The round slammed home and the thing recoiled with a silent scream that cracked the airlock viewport. Energy weapons bounced right off it. Mara grabbed a satchel charge from the gear rack, priming the 3-second timer. She heaved it at the core, the explosion blasting a fist-sized hole in the entity's light form. It shrieked, fragments scattering across the deck, then reformed faster, bigger, tendrils lashing for the comms panel. All hands, this is Captain Mara. She yanked her comms earpiece in, static cutting through the alarm noise. Evacuate to the shuttle now. Cargo hold charges are set to blow in 2 minutes. Leave all non-essential salvage. A burst of panic chatter cut off as the entity smashed the comms panel to slag. Before Mara could curse, a new transmission cut through the static, haughty translated, dripping with the kind of condescension human scavengers had heard from 3 separate alien empires in as many years. Human vermin, you have activated Void Edge Station's sovereign defense protocols. Surrender all seized salvage, and we will permit your evacuation before we purge your infestation from Kilari territory. Mara snorted, yanking the detonator for the cargo hold's fuel reserves off her belt. The 3 crates of alien railgun slugs and intact navigation core they'd pulled from the station's weapons cache were already loaded on the shuttle, worth enough to keep her crew fed and supplied for 6 months. Tell your command their defense protocol just ate 3 of their patrol drones we found in the hangar bay, and you're welcome to try and purge us. We're taking the salvage, and we're towing your drone wreckage for parts. She slammed the cargo hold detonator trigger as the entity lashed out, smashing the airlock's outer control panel to slag. The entire deck lurched, tilting 30 degrees as the station's artificial gravity failed, red emergency strobes kicking on to replace the dead overhead lights. Plasma from the shaft poured into the engineering deck, the heat so intense it blistered the skin on Mara's exposed forearm. 60 seconds to core critical, Rios yelled, already at the shuttle's docking override, slamming the button to cycle the outer airlock hatch. Shuttle's transponder is locked in. Clamps are holding for now. Chen limped over to the salvage locker, yanking out 2 heavy kinetic grenades. She primed one, hurling it at the entity's core. The explosion blew a chunk out of the dark center, and the thing thrashed, tendrils flailing as it tried to absorb the plasma venting from the shaft. It's feeding on the reactor energy. If it stabilizes, it'll be big enough to punch through the shuttle's hull before we undock. Mara didn't hesitate. She grabbed the last satchel charge, wired it to the airlock's external explosive bolts, and set the timer for 5 seconds. She heaved it at the entity's feet, then grabbed Chen's good arm, hauling her toward the outer airlock as Rios cycled the hatch. They piled through the outer hatch, slamming the manual seal shut behind them just as the satchel charge detonated, the blast throwing the entity back into the plasma vent. The station groaned, the entire hull buckling as the core hit critical, the first explosion from the cargo hold fuel reserves blasting a hole in the station's port side. They strapped into the shuttle's pilot and co-pilot seats, Rios yanking the controls hard as the docking clamps released. The shuttle burned away from the station, the void outside lighting up bright enough to outshine Void Edge's binary suns. For half a second they thought they'd made it. Then the entity burst out of the station's breached hull, a mass of plasma and shadow lurching after them. The second explosion from the station's core caught it mid-lunge, tearing it apart into a million dissipating sparks. Rios whooped, then cut off short as a sleek, angular Kilari warship decloaked off the station's starboard side, weapon ports flaring open as it targeted their shuttle. Well, fuck, Rios muttered, yanking the controls hard to starboard. The first volley of alien plasma fire singed the shuttle's port wing, the hull breach alarm screaming as the internal temperature spiked. Mara grabbed the comms mic, her voice calm, steady, as the warship's second volley came in. All hands brace for evasive maneuvers, we've got a new problem. Word count 987, we need to write chapter 10 of 12 for episode 9. The story context ends with the shuttle under attack by a Kilari warship. Chapter 10 should continue the high-stakes action following the crew's escape or confrontation. Must be 800-100 0 words, crisp military dialogue, no cliches, macro to micro scale. Output only story text. The shuttle's hull screamed as the second volley clipped the aft stabilizer. Rios fought the controls, the ship yawing hard to port as the Kilari warship's plasma cannons cycled for a third shot. They're hurting us, Chen said, her voice tight, one hand clamped over the bleeding wound on her shoulder. That first hit was a warning, they want us alive. Mara didn't take her eyes off the tactical display. The warship was a crescent-shaped hunter-killer, its weapon ports arranged in a classic Kilari formation, 2 forward batteries, 1 dorsal turret, and a ventral missile pod, standard for an interdiction vessel, designed to disable, not destroy. Rios cut main engines. Kill the transponder, go dark. You'll lose life support in 12 minutes, Rios shot back, but his hands were already moving, slaving the shuttle's power grid to emergency batteries. The cabin lights flickered to dim red, the engines spooling down to silence. The Kilari ship held course, its targeting lasers flickering across their hull as it tried to reacquire a lock. They're scanning for emissions, Chen said, watching the threat display. If we power up anything, they'll see us. Mara unbuckled her harness, drifting toward the aft equipment locker. Then we don't power up, we use momentum. She pulled out a compact EVA suit, still sealed in its vacuum pack. Rios plot a ballistic trajectory toward the station's debris field. Use the gas cloud from the fuel explosion as cover. No thrusters, no RCS. Just vector and drift. That's a one-way trip unless we bleed off velocity, Rio said, but he was already entering the coordinates. The debris field is tumbling at 15 clicks per second. One impact and we're confetti. Better than being boarded. The Kilari don't take prisoners they don't intend to interrogate. Mara tore open the suit pack, stepping into the lower half. Chen, you're with me. We're going outside. Chen's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. She grabbed the second suit, wincing as she pulled it over her injured arm. What's the play? The Kilari ship has a blind spot under its ventral arc. If we can get close enough, we can plan a charge on its hull. That'll buy us enough time to reach the debris field and rendezvous with the salvage runner. We don't have a charge left, Rio said. We used the last one on the station. Mara sealed her helmet, the HUD flickering to life. We don't need a charge, we need a thermal spike. The shuttle's reactor core is still hot. If we crack the casing and vent the plasma, it'll hit the Kilari's shields like a shaped charge. Rio stared at her. You're going to sacrifice the shuttle. We're going to sacrifice the shuttle's reactor. The hull is salvageable. We'll ride the debris field until the Kilari give up or we can signal the runner. Chen finished sealing her suit, her face pale but steady. I'm with you. Mara grabbed a cutting tool from the locker, handing Chen a magnetic clamp. Rios, once we're outside, cut the internal comms, go full passive. We'll use suit-to-suit only. Understood. Rios' voice was grim. You've got 18 minutes before life support drops below survivable levels in the suits. Make it count. They cycled through the aft airlock, the void swallowing them as the shuttle's hull receded. The Kilari warship loomed above, its crescent shape blotting out the distant stars. The debris field was a glittering cloud of shattered alloy and frozen gas, tumbling slowly toward the station's wreckage. Mara kicked off the shuttle, her magnetic boots clanging against the hull as she oriented toward the reactor access panel. Chen followed, her movements precise despite the pain in her shoulder. We'll need to cut through 3 layers of shielding, Mara said, her voice flat over the suit channel. The plasma vent is on the opposite side. We'll aim it toward the Kilari's ventral battery. Chen nodded, pulling out the cutting tool. I'll start the breach. You set the directional charge. The work was methodical, brutal. The cutting torch flared blue-white in the vacuum, the alloy peeling back in curling strips. Mara's suit HUD showed a steady countdown, 14 minutes. The Kilari ship shifted, its dorsal turret rotating as it scanned the empty space where the shuttle had been. A searchlight swept across the debris field, its beam cutting through the gas cloud. They're getting suspicious, Chen said, her voice low. Keep cutting. Mara finished rigging the plasma vent, using a magnetic clamp to create a directional funnel. The reactor core pulsed beneath her feet, a dull thrum she could feel through her boots. The searchlight passed over them, then doubled back. A warning klaxon blared in her helmet. Target acquisition. They've got us, Chen said. Mara grabbed the vent release, yanking it open. Superheated plasma erupted in a controlled jet, slamming into the Kilari's ventral battery. The warship's shields flared white, then collapsed. The plasma punched through, melting the weapon port and the hull beneath it. The Kilari ship lurched, its internal power grid spiking as the damage cascaded. Emergency alarms echoed across its hull, visible as flickering orange lights along its spine. Move, Mara said, pushing off the shuttle's hull. She and Chen tumbled into the debris field, grasping a chunk of twisted alloy as the shuttle's reactor went critical behind them. The explosion was silent, a blossoming sphere of fire that engulfed the Kilari's underside. The warship listed, its engines flaring as it tried to stabilize. The debris field tumbled past them, carrying them deeper into the wreckage. Mara's HUD showed 8 minutes of life support. She grabbed Chen's arm, pointing toward a distant shape, the salvage runner, its transponder finally blinking a faint beacon. We're not out yet, Mara said. Chapter 11, the station's awakening. The salvage runner loomed ahead, its hull scarred but intact, beacon pulsing like a heartbeat in the void. Mara and Chen kicked off the drifting alloy, propelling themselves toward the docking collar. Their oxygen counters ticked down with merciless precision. Runner's hatch is sealed, Chen said, voice clipped, eyes locked on the faint outline of the docking ring. They'll open, Mara replied. Her tone carried no doubt, only the cold certainty of someone who had survived too many impossible odds. The Kilari warship behind them convulsed, its spine splitting under cascading reactor failures, but even crippled it remained dangerous. Mara's HUD registered a surge, an emergency transmission burst, encrypted in Kilari battle code. They're calling reinforcements, Chen muttered. Good, let them come. Mara's jaw tightened. We're not the ones trapped out here. The docking collar hissed open. 2 figures in armored suits hauled them inside, slamming the hatch shut as decompression alarms wailed. The runner's interior was dim, lit by red emergency strips. Captain Rourke stood waiting, his scarred face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. You lit up half the sector, he said, voice gravelly. Kilari command will be on us in minutes. Mara pulled off her helmet, sweat streaking her brow. Then we move now. The station's core is still intact. That's what they're after. Rourke's eyes narrowed. You're saying they'll risk fleet assets for a derelict, not a derelict, Mara corrected. Void Edge wasn't abandoned, it was sealed. Whatever's inside, they want it contained. We just tore open their lock, the words hung heavy in the stale air. Chen leaned against the bulkhead, catching her breath. We saw the Kelari shields collapse. They weren't protecting themselves, they were protecting the station. Rourke turned to the tactical officer. Status, multiple Kelari signatures inbound, heavy cruisers, ETA 6 minutes. The runner shuddered as its engines spooled. Mara steadied herself against the console. We can't outrun them, but we can make them bleed. Rourke's lips curled into something between a grin and a snarl. You've got a plan. Mara tapped the console, pulling up schematics of Void Edge. Alien stations stretched across the display, a labyrinth of corridors and reactor conduits. The Kelari fear what's inside. That means leverage. We draw them in, force them to fight us here. If the station wakes, it won't distinguish between Kelari and human. Chen's voice was low, almost a whisper. You're gambling with something we don't understand. Mara met her gaze. Understanding doesn't matter, survival does. The runner's comms crackled, Kelari broadcast, translated by the ship's AI. The voice was cold, imperious. Human scavengers, you trespass on sanctified ground. Withdraw or be annihilated. Rourke leaned forward, pressing transmit. This ground isn't yours anymore. He cut the channel before they could reply. The tactical display lit up, Kelari cruisers dropping from warp, their hulls bristling with weapons. Mara's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. Position us along the station's ventral spine. If they fire, they risk breaching containment. The runner slid into place, dwarfed by the colossal alien structure. Its surface glowed faintly, as though responding to the presence of ships. Chen's console beeped. Energy surge inside the station. It's waking. The Kelari cruisers hesitated, their formations tightening. Mara watched them, calm as stone. They know what's coming. The surge became a roar, an electromagnetic pulse that rippled across the void. The runner's systems flickered, stabilizers whining. One Kelari cruiser wasn't fast enough, its shields collapsed, hull plating peeling away as invisible forces tore at it. Rourke barked orders. All hands brace, weapons hot. The runner's rail batteries spat tungsten slugs, ripping into the crippled cruiser. Mara's eyes tracked the impact, calculating vectors. Target their engines. Force them into the station's gravity well. The slugs punched through, igniting plasma trails. The cruiser spun, dragged toward Void Edge's surface. As it struck, the station responded, panels shifting, conduits opening like veins. A light pulse from within, not mechanical, not natural. Chen whispered, "What the hell is that?" Mara's voice was steel. The reason they sealed it. The other Kelari cruisers opened fire, beams lancing across the void. The runner's shields flared, buckling under the assault. Rourke gritted his teeth. "We can't hold this line." Mara's hand hovered over the console. "We don't need to. The station will fight for us." As if answering her, Void Edge erupted. Tendrils of energy lashed out, striking Kelari ships with surgical precision. Hulls split, reactors imploded. The cruisers faltered, their disciplined formation unraveling. Rourke stared at the display, disbelief etched across his face. It's choosing targets. Mara's eyes narrowed, not choosing, recognizing it knows the Kelari. Chen's voice trembled. "And what if it learns us?" Silence filled the cabin. Mara finally spoke, her tone colder than the void outside. "Then we make sure it learns we're not prey." The runner banked hard, weaving through debris as the station's fury spread. Kelari ships burned, their empire's arrogance shattered against something older, something beyond control. Mara stood tall, watching the chaos unfold. This is the clash they feared, not empire against empire. Not fleet against fleet, humanity against the unknown, and we're the only ones willing to stand here. The station pulsed again, brighter, hungrier. The void itself seemed to recoil. Chen whispered, "We woke it." Mara's reply was a blade. "No, we unleashed it." The chapter closed with the runner diving deeper along the station's spine, Kelari wreckage scattering behind them, and Void Edge's awakening echoing across the stars. An ancient horror no empire could cage, and no human could outrun. The runner's hull screamed as it skidded along Void Edge's pitted outer plating. A fist-sized chunk of Kelari fighter slag slamming into the viewport and spiderwebbing the outer polycarbonate layer. Rourke's knuckles were white on the stick, thrusters dialed to max to keep them tucked against the station's spine, out of the Kelari point defense grid still spitting fire at anything moving in the system. "Brake left hard," he barked, yanking the stick. The runner banked so steeply Mara's shoulder slammed into the sensor console, and a tendril of Void Edge's pale blue energy lashed out 300 meters ahead, wrapping around the command tower of the Kelari flagship Vera's Resolve and yanking it clean off the cruiser's hull. The tower vanished into the station's maw a second later. No explosion, no debris, just the sudden, silent venting of the bridge's atmosphere. "It's not just taking out ships," Mara said, fingers flying across the comms override panel as she pulled the station's raw signal feed. "It's pulling their tactical databanks, every Kelari fleet movement, every outpost coordinate, every encryption key for the next 3 sectors. Chen's head snapped up from the long-range scan, face pale. It just broadcast the entire Kalari Third Fleet deployment list to their homeworld command net using their own authorization codes. Their high command is going to think the fleet defected. The station pulsed again, brighter this time, and the energy wave rolled past the runner so close the cockpit lights flickered. Every Kalari comms channel that had been squawking panic went dead silent a second later. The Vera's resolve split down the middle, not from an explosion but like wet clay pulled apart by two giant hands. The two halves drifted apart, their reactor cores venting before the crew could trigger evacuation alerts. "It's turning toward us," Rourke said, voice tight. A tendril thicker than the rest swept toward the runner's tail, moving fast enough to leave a trail of ionized vapor in its wake. Mara slammed a sequence into the console, overriding the station's targeting lock for 0.8 seconds, just long enough for Rourke to kick the thrusters to full and dive into a gap in the station's outer hull. "It's not hunting us, it's asking." Chen frowned. Asking. The Kalari broadcast nothing but aggression, hierarchy, conquest when they dropped out of warp. That's what the station answered. Mara tapped the scavenger frequency they'd used to tap into the station's old power relays 3 weeks prior, when they'd thought it was just a derelict or depot. "We don't play by Empire rules." She hit send, transmitting a single encrypted packet to the station's core, humanity. Scavenger Crew ASF 7. No integration TERMS, no station asset looting without mutual agreement, no expansion into human CLAMED space, no attack on civilian assets. The station hummed so loud the runner's hull rattled, and a stream of gold data flooded the cockpit display. Star charts, uncharted systems in the void edge, derelict stations untouched by Empire surveyors, resource caches hidden in nebula shadows no Kalari or Thalax scout had ever found. "It's a trade offer," Chen said, voice thick with disbelief. "All the uncharted systems in the sector if we agree to leave the station alone." "Tell it yes," Rourke said, not taking his eyes off the long-range scan. 6 Kalari capital ships were dropping out of warp at the edge of the system, their main guns already charging. "Third Expeditionary Fleet. They'll glass this whole system before they let anyone have that station." Mara hit confirm. The station pulsed once, bright gold light washing over the cockpit, and the runner's engines surged far past their rated max, boosted by the station's own power, pushing them to 1.2 light speed, faster than any scavenger ship had ever flown. They cleared Void Edge's gravity well 10 seconds later, and behind them, the station's tendrils snapped out to meet the incoming Kalari fleet. The lead cruiser blew up before it could fire a single shot, its reactor imploding under the force of the station's energy. The rest of the fleet scattered, their disciplined formation shattering just like the first wave had, panic overriding their training as they fled back to warp. Rourke glanced back at the burning fleet, then at the star map still glowing on the console. "Well, that's one way to make sure the Kalari don't come back for round 2. Mara leaned back in her seat, the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time since they'd breached the station's airlock. "No. That's us making sure the next time they find something they can't control, they think twice before pointing their guns at it." The runner jumped to FTL a second later, the stars stretching into lines of light. The last thing they saw on the scope before the sensors faded was Void Edge, pulsing once like a salute, before vanishing back into the void, hidden again, waiting for the next group dumb enough to think they could loot something older than Empires.